Welcome everyone to the next episode of Comedy Guy. Comedy, we're doing all kinds of stuff here. It's not just the showbiz. We've got stuff that Lewis is interested in. And today it's a different sort of topic again. So today I'm talking with a gentleman. His name is Jesse Wojtkowiak. And Jesse is head of cybersecurity. What are we going to say? Head of information security. Sorry. For Pipedrive. But also he is a former US Navy Aviator with about 22 years of experience. And I met Jesse a couple of weeks ago at a cybersecurity conference where he was talking. And what piqued my interest was that day I was watching people talk about cybersecurity and everything. And everyone, first of all, most people have got a technology. Oh, we've got this app and we've got a firewall and we've got alerts and things. And that's how we're doing the cyber. I went, okay, well, fair enough. That's very good. And then some other people were talking about, well, we're going to give training to the people and the training's good, isn't it? And there's evaluations. I went, okay, well, that is also very good. And then I think I already knew that Jesse was former, from the US Navy, and so I kind of thought, okay, what's going on with this guy? How did this guy from the Navy end up running the cybersecurity? What's the connection? And when he started to speak, I mean, he was talking about all those things, of course, but then there was some other thread running through it. It was a thread of the people. It was a thread of not just giving someone a training a couple of times a year. It seemed to go further into the organization. And then there was just one little bullet point on the slides, which just said, bullet point, leadership. And I went, boom, that's it. And then kind of the bits fell into my mind that I think Jesse is using a lot of the principles of leadership that I was then surmising that he must have brought from his military experience to be able to implement this excellent idea of cybersecurity through an organization. And I think good leadership principles are a way to do anything in any organization, not just cybersecurity. It's a way to get everybody on board, to communicate to everyone and make sure everyone's good and actually doing it. And when I listened to the talk, I went, yeah, I get it. I see where you're coming from with this. So here in the studio today, Jesse, thank you, sir, for coming in to talk to me.
My pleasure.
So I surmised after this that I had a small suspicion that kind of wrote you a letter and said, hey, do you possibly at all think maybe you might like to possibly, I don't know, talk about leadership? And, well, in much more polite terms, but hell yes seemed to be the answer coming from you.
Yep.
Now you're married to an Estonian lady. You've been here for a few years now already.
It's a common story, yes.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that's of all the things, two foreigners in this room, that's actually not what I was going to focus on in this talk. I realized I've done all this thinking about this, how we're going to have this conversation. I'm like, none of it is to do with two foreigners living in this fine country.
Well, my wife asked me to come here some years ago, and she said, just give it 2 months. And we did. And I find that it's a good fit. So I've had no problem staying.
Okay.
Not to say I don't miss home with my friends and family and that type of thing, but it's a friendly place. The people maybe suit my character, and I don't see any reason to leave, especially when it's so easy to live here because of the technology and the government and this type of thing. So
I would agree with that. I'm with that one too. And for me, I've been here for a bit over 10 years now. So this is life now. This is, Estonians, why don't you live back in Australia with the sunshine? I don't know, the same reason as you. I'm stuck all my life and everything's here now. What am I can't? This is it. So, so I guess, very briefly, just to give you context to what you're doing here, you're head of, again, I always want to get these right, head of information security at Pipedrive. So what does that job involve in your words?
So, information security is kind of you hear cybersecurity and information security. Cybersecurity is kind of a subset of information security. Information is a little bit bigger. It deals more with cross-organization and information assets, whether they be on paper, in a computer, wherever. And, of course, at Pipedrive, we focus more on the IT stuff, so things that are in databases and what have you. So, of course, there's as you said before, there's a technical element. We have all those people. Yeah. And quite frankly, when I got there, I understood very quickly that everyone's already doing this. They just need someone to put some organization around it. So that suited. So I started, and as time went on, I understood that perhaps I didn't need to worry so much about cybersecurity as a way of organizing and training people so that they could do it better. And so the program grew. And this, like I said, my 4th year, coming on my 5th. I don't think, I'm definitely not coming in there and bringing anything technical that someone there isn't familiar with or know. So like the right people are in the right jobs, doing the right things. I'm just dealing with some administrative thing that helps us achieve processes better, let's say.
Makes sense. And that is, I mean, it's a humble and I think a nice way to look at it, that to come into an organization, especially full of specialists,
yes,
and say, I'm not smarter than all of you.
Absolutely. And one of the things I actually love about the job is these, well, first of all, younger people are like, they challenge me every day. So I can go talk to them about an issue or a problem, and I'm learning as much as they are. And I find one of the things actually about the culture I really love is that when I teach someone something about an issue they didn't know about, they immediately get it and they immediately want to fix it. And sometimes it takes 2 months, sometimes it takes 2 weeks, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they're on it, and I know that it's going to get fixed. So it's not like I'm fighting to get these people to do their job. Like, they want to do it. As soon as they have the information, they use that information in the way they're supposed to. So
there's a lot of there in terms of changing a culture or getting. It sounds bad to getting people to do what you want, which is not the way that sounds. But it's like if it's not bad if you want people to do something, but it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing for the team. It's the right thing for them. It's not a bad thing to get them to do what you want. I guess you're building a relationship with them,
yeah, of course,
and you're explaining why they have to be doing this and not just barking an order.
And sometimes once again, the conversation has to be repetitive. I'm very patient. So I have to have the conversation more than once, or even explain it more than once, or even go learn it and then come back and explain it in a way that they understand it. So, for example, like you said you had a technical background.
Sure, yeah, I have a Master's of Computer Science. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you understand, like a developer thinks differently than a network engineer, than a systems engineer. They all think differently.
Sure.
And then like product people, so they're all in different times and space, and you got to understand how they view time. So, I mean, there's a whole science here, but like in communication, when like a developer, for example, like that guy is thinking about right now. Like he's in the moment. He wants to do things, and if it distracts him from right now or what he's working on, it's not useful to him. Okay. Systems guys, they're actually kind of thinking long term. Like, so their perspective is like, what happens when things go sideways? Mm-hmm. They're always kind of preparing in the back of their head for that day, and but very seldom do you see anybody look in the past. And so like, because agile. Anyway, so and probably security are the people that are like looking the most long term and the farthest in the back, because we have trends that we want to defend ourselves against. So yeah, so every time I go in the conversation, I even got to take into consideration like how they perceive time and like how this conversation has to go, so I can get my point across. That
is very interesting, and I guess when you said to say that how you perceive the past. It's not often that word, the past, is brought up. And maybe in terms of it's a trend or something, or no, but to say like, how do you perceive history? Everyone's looking forward. Everyone's doing the work right now. I've got to do this. I've got a goal that I'm getting towards. We've got a strategic revenue target we're supposed to hit or something like that. But to actively think about that, okay, I'm reflecting on what happened before.
So culturally also, we have 60 countries represented. So even culturally, how people perceive time is different. And so like Australia is much like America, like we're always kind of looking forward. If you're from like India, China, even Russia, I think you're looking backwards a little bit. You have this history, this context, this empire that you were a part of, and it's part of your identity. So you perceive the world through that kind of lens. And so even these types of things I pay attention to.
That is interesting. Like, you have quite a mix of people at Pipedrive, even just in the Thailand office.
Yeah.
Are you in that big one in that WoHo building? Is that that one? You're in that one there? Okay, that's very nice. They've got that big stage there, right? That area, that entry level there. I've been in there a few times. Okay, that's very nice.
Pretty good, yeah.
It's good. I wanted to talk to you today because I run Comedy Estonia. It's my job to corral and lead and provide guidance to these comedians. And I have an office staff as well, just like anyone might have employees and colleagues. And then I've got these artists that I need to work with. And artists are very interesting for me because they are not profit driven. They're not always acting like a paid employee might. I've come to I did some reading many years ago about how to work with volunteers and what were the motivations that were behind volunteers and how were their motivations different from a paid employee, and eventually came to the conclusion you should treat everyone much the same. They were like, well, with a volunteer, you've got to find their reason. You've got to find their motivation for being there and what keeps them going. And then I went, wait, why don't we just do that for paid employees as well? But anyway, with artists are very interesting, I find, when you're leading and working with them, because if you and we are, let's say, artist management. It is our job to work with them, guide their careers and help them through. But we are both, it's not a clear chain of command with an artist. It's not like, oh, they're the boss and I'm the subordinate, or I'm the manager boss and they're that. It's actually this quite equal two-way street. And that's what I find very interesting about managing artists, that they are still kind of the boss of their own career, extremely independent. You can't tell them what to do. You can't force them into doing something. And I don't know if you can force a paid employee. That's another debate there. Sure, yeah. But on the other hand, they look to us for guidance. It is our job to guide them. It is what we are there to guide their careers and give them the best advice. And so we found that. So I've looked, to the practice of leadership and formally studying that, and I found it's paid off very nicely to apply that to both my employees and the artists that we work with. And I thought we could talk a little bit about your military career and your work as a US Navy Aviator, and maybe some of the lessons. I mean, there's got to be good stories in there. First of all, there's got to be good stories, and then maybe a few lessons mixed in the middle of that. So now you're in the US Navy, 22 years, as I understand.
Yes.
Okay, so that's quite now you were just saying you went in straight out of school.
Yeah, I went out of high school, and at the time I could have maybe gone to college for wrestling. But
wrestling.
That career doesn't last. Okay. Navy kind of suited me. I joined up. I went in for actually an education program. They're right. You get to see the world.
Why did the Navy suit you over the other branches?
Well, actually, probably the Marine Corps would have suited me best. I like structure. Yeah, let's say that. And I like to work out. So, it would probably been a better choice, but the Navy gave me more education. Okay. So I chose the Navy. Get to travel a lot, not one place. So that was very appealing. And, so I went in, had a ridiculous uniform. Had to endure that for 10 years before I became an officer. And then I got a better uniform. So,
what's the difference in the uniform before you come to an officer? I mean,
you have to see it. It's terrible.
Okay.
But it's very traditional. Let me put it that way.
Right.
It's about 200 years out of date.
So you joined the Navy, and as I understand, you went on to be an aviator.
Yes, I did.
Now, I only know at one stage you were flying helicopters.
So we go through flight school, start out with fixed wing, and then we go to specialize. And so everyone flies a fixed wing aircraft first. And after that, I chose to go to helicopters. And you may not appreciate this, but for me, when you're at 30,000 feet going very, very fast, there's no relative motion, so it's not so exciting. You just feel the change in speed.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
But with the helicopter, when you're going down a riverbed and there's trees on either side and you're playing around, it's just more fun. So. So there was that, and also there was more duty stations or places to go in a helicopter. So
okay.
So I had a wanderlust, and that's how I filled it.
So it's Navy. It was Navy first, and then because I was like, the question then becomes: you want to fly planes? Why not the Air Force? I mean, I know that each branch has their own.
Yeah, no, different culture.
Okay. You could already tell from there already from the outside, you could tell the differences, because everyone, who knows people sitting here in Estonia, they're like, military, isn't it all military? You could somehow tell already.
No, yeah, I had some exposure ahead of time, and so the Air Force is a very rule-abiding service. Let's just put it that way. Okay. And that's actually the best way to describe it is like this. In the Air Force, if you're going to do something, you say, "Is it in the book?" Mm-hmm. And no, I can't do it. In the Navy, it's kind of like, does it say I can't do it? Then go ahead and do it. So there's kind of a different culture. I mean, within reason, but that's just generally like there's less kind of constraints on your judgment.
That, well, actually, I don't want to jump kind of too far ahead in the story, but there was something that, as I was looking through your history, and I saw at least my deep research into the LinkedIn page. Yes, I'm very good with this, right? Now, you worked for an organization in the Navy called NATOPS.
So NATOPS is actually a standardization part of the Navy. And so I didn't work for NATOPS. I was the NATOP designee in my squadron.
Oh, okay.
And so NATOPS is actually a part of a bigger organization we're not going to talk about. And we'll get lost in acronyms. But so they have standards. And there's a designation inside of every squadron that the people live up to standards. And this is done, for everything in part of the organization. It's very comprehensive. So, and it's actually kind of an honor to become the NATOPS officer because everyone flies with you and you kind of know how everyone's doing and you make sure they live up to, or like you hold the bar. So if someone doesn't live up to the bar, then like you're the guy that says, sorry, you didn't cut it. It's kind of hard because they're all your friends, but at the same time, it makes the organization healthier. So.
There's a lot there to unpack because there's levels of leadership in there. There's levels of dealing with equals and saying and having to display leadership over those who are maybe on an equal level to you. But just before in that, because and there's also the level of putting in procedures into organizations, and that procedures don't mean, well, maybe don't necessarily have to mean that this is the rule book, you follow the rule book, and that's it. They don't have to mean that.
There are those. And generally, people know what those are. But I think that's one common misconception, like even with Pipedrive, I deal with it now, is that procedures and policy are there as guidance for the most part. And if you're in a situation where this does not make sense, it's probably best that you challenge it. Like if you have no one to ask and you are without leadership, follow the rules. It'll keep you safe, but it may not be the best thing to do. So getting people to kind of have that perspective is many conversations. So
it could be a culture change as well, that people don't understand. There's a certain level of letting them know that you can do, like, you won't get in trouble. It's okay. Like if you take a logical step, and there's just this one line that I read about NATOPS, because as I understand, it's about putting in procedures for the Navy airplanes about how to fly them, how to maintain them, everything, how to do the whole thing. And just one quote, and this because it was started in the 60s, and it was prior to the NATOPS program coming in and standardizing, it would be like they might have the same plane in multiple different units or whatever, and they would get serviced in different ways. Same plane, why is it being serviced in different ways? And even prior to this concept being introduced, qualified pilots transitioning to a new aircraft were essentially told how to start it and then go to fly.
Yes. And
that's because you just think, hey, the military does everything. No, the military doesn't have everything by default. This had to be brought in and standardized. And
yeah, after Vietnam, we had to make some adjustments. So, yeah. So if you don't have standard behavior, you don't know what to expect. People don't know what to expect. Very, very often, people they think that they want freedom. Mm-hmm. They think that I don't need the rules. I don't need this. And people are actually drawn to startups for this. But as time goes on, the organization gets bigger. Just communication gets complicated, and so like a standard set of rules, once again, is leadership's guidance in lieu of leadership. And so like these things have been decided, do it this way if you can't figure it out. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing it a different way, you may not have thought everything through. So perhaps Just do it this way until you've thought about it for a while.
Sure. And look, maybe your way's got, maybe there's advantages to your way. Maybe there are positives in it. Maybe we can roll that into the standard procedure.
Well, this is like NATOPS is very heavy. Like,
Sure, no doubt.
You probably never saw anything like this in your life. But that being said, it gets changed constantly. It gets updated constantly. It's a living document. So, but there's a procedure that goes with the change. So if you say, okay, this isn't working, this is why, and you can define it, you submit your change, and then, if you're lucky, a year and a half it gets changed. But still, it can happen. So.
There is some process there. Yeah. For us with comedians, one place that I encountered this was when we run open mics, probably, shows, 15 a month, or I'd say every couple of days we've got one happening.
Yeah.
And any particular show, it can be in some venue, it could be someplace, and there's probably 15 comedians on any particular show in one of those things. So there's 15 people that need to be organized. There's a venue, there's lights, there's sound, there's chairs. Now, hopefully, most of that's already done. But there can be occasion where none of the senior people are there for some reason. I don't know, the bus was late for everybody or something, or we just forgot one day out of whatever one time. And there's been some moments where I noticed there was a whole bunch. I wasn't there. Nobody else senior happened to be there at that time, just coincidentally. And the junior comedians were all sitting around going, what do we do? It's half an hour to the show. We don't have a host. We haven't assigned a host to the show. We haven't done the sound. And I first thought, well, just go fucking work it out. What's the problem? But of course, they're junior. They're new. They don't know what. And it took that time for me to explain to them, okay, mostly things are set up. I'm going to now teach a bunch of you just a little bit. Here's a microphone. Here's how it works. Good, you got it. You know that. Oh, actually, you know what? Turns out you do know how to do lights. And then I said, my direction to you is, if no one is telling you what to do, just go and make a show happen.
Yeah.
Just somehow use your best intuition or what you know, talk. If you make something of a logical decision, no one will be angry at you. No one will be upset for what you did. Just there are people walking into that room. You have to make a show for them. And that seems to have helped now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, like in that kind of situation, do you have a different procedure for every venue?
Not too much, no. It's the one basic procedure can fit every venue. Check the lights, check the sound, because we're not like check the particular sound desk in this. They're all kind of the same. The lights, is there some light on you? This is not the most technical of procedures. Can the people hear you? Do a quick sound check, fiddle with the knobs mostly. So it's mostly a pretty similar process for all.
So you set the expectations and everyone's living up to it now. You basically have a culture around it. So anytime someone new comes in, they just fit in the culture, and the culture takes care of them rather than...
Somewhat, to a certain degree, I've found. To a certain degree, but eventually there is a certain turnover rate, just because some comedian people come in, they try it for one show, 3 shows, a few months, and then decide they don't want to do it. So there is a turnover of people. And yes, the group will self-educate, but I do find at some stages it's good to have a refresher, good to remind them of this. Maybe they just need to hear it from the leader again, just need to hear that these things are okay, that I will impart the responsibility upon you. And I guess that's it. I'm imparting responsibility. You can do that. And I've often found that's the best way to get people to step up is
stating it.
Yeah, stating it and giving them the responsibility, like, you can do it there. So yeah, that was the NATOPS thing. And I exactly what you just said, actually, more of it that, because what was I found it, the main document, I don't know, it said it was the main NATOPS document, the main, General Flight and Operating Instructions, 300 pages. It was a real page turner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I like this line from the first page. It was, the standardization program is not intended to stifle individual initiative, but rather to aid commanding officers in increasing their unit's combat potential without reducing command prestige or responsibility. Take charge. You can do it. It's okay. A little bit of decentralized command. You'll work it out.
Absolutely. Actually, well, that's the thing, though. If you have a plan it's a plan to deviate from. And like, I've done so much planning in my life, I can not even tell you. But the NATO House, once again, it's a plan. And like, you may do things differently, have a standard operating procedure at whatever squadron, whatever even. If you change ships, you might have a different procedure. So this is all things that you take into account and you learn it as you go. But that's absolutely right. It's not an excuse for poor judgment. You don't use the rules to say, well, the rules said that. I mean, come on. If you're that caliber of person, you probably will get weeded out by your peers, actually. But you're letting the team down by doing that, actually. So, once again, we write it here so we have continuity of operations, but not necessarily as an excuse for like poor judgment.
Sure. So let's go. So you start to fly, and you're training on fixed wing, and then helicopter starts to take working with the rotors seems to take your interest at this stage. And what was your first deployment to?
Okay, my first deployment was when I was enlisted.
Okay.
I was on the USS Forrestal, and it was right after the Gulf War, and we went to the first Gulf War. And then
were you deployed when the Forrestal went to the Persian Gulf for that?
Yes.
Okay.
No. The Forrestal didn't go to the Persian Gulf. They went to the Med. Because
you
could reach it from either.
Yeah, Mr. Australian geography knows nothing over here. Right. Now I see what you mean. Yes.
So anyway, basically that's one fleet, and then there's another fleet in Japan, and so they took from the east, and we came from the west.
Okay, so were you actually in Desert Storm? Were you, or just after that?
The first one, no. So
okay,
we were on the ship, but we didn't get close.
Because the Farstar was as I understood, it was pretty old by the time you arrived.
So yeah, if you know your history, during Vietnam they had an accident, and this was called the Forrestal had a fire, and this is where a missile, because he didn't have standard operating procedures, they went skipping across the deck and they hit another plane, and the aircraft carrier was getting ready for flight operations to launch, and so they all fueled. So the worst situation, and all had ammo everywhere. That was actually where McCain, if you remember correctly, John McCain.
Senator John McCain.
So he was on that ship. And you can actually see the videos where he's jumping out of his aircraft on A4, I believe, and running to safety. And they were just started pushing aircraft over. So Forrestal was a part of this.
So there was a fire on, the planes were all juiced up. They were full of fuel. Yeah. They're sitting on the deck. And you said a missile skipped across from one of the planes, or an enemy?
Misfired.
A misfire, right. Okay, and so that started to ignite some of the planes or something on the deck.
There was an explosion, I believe. I haven't studied this recently. But anyway, explosions happen, the fire starts, and they just, once again, everyone starts fighting the fire. And so this is something everyone's taught in the Navy. Everyone's a firefighter. You learn that at the beginning. So they did their best. They saved the ship, but it was basically out of the engagement for the rest of the war, I believe. They had to go back and even the flight deck, they burnt down through like 2 or 3 floors. So lots of damage. Okay. But that was the Forrestal.
Right. So this is the ship you were on.
That was the first ship
many years later still, yes.
And then after that, I deployed on the Saratoga, and then we did go to 3 cruises in the Med. Basically, it was lovely. And then after this,
and they were both aircraft carriers.
Yes.
Right. So you're on carriers and you're flying helicopters.
So I wasn't flying at this point. At this point, I was still enlisted. I was working on aircraft. I was an aviation fire control technician. So
everyone's including you as a firefighter. Okay.
No. Fire control means fire control. So
fire. Yeah. Fire.
So if you want to fire from one aircraft to another, you have a system, that fire control system. So I worked on those.
Right. Sorry. I think I know everything here. I know nothing.
So many acronyms. Yeah.
And explain to me, because there's enlisted and then later you're an officer.
Yeah.
This bit's always confused me, the difference between like the listed, non-enlisted, and then there's like NCO and all.
Yeah, so when you're enlisted, like basically this is, all this comes from basically British naval history, just so you know. And when you come in, you're enlisted. They have the enlisted ranks, the officers ranks, and this comes from the tradition in the British military where the officers were kind of like the leadership or from the royalty, and the enlisted were. And that's definitely changed. Enlisted is basically where you're a specialist, and officers are where you're kind of actually a generalist. You may get a specialty, but you're still a generalist and trained to kind of take command or lead. So different roles. And so I just wanted to get out of high school. I did. I enlisted. And I got an education. And going through it, I enjoyed myself, and I applied for commissioning programs, officer programs. And I got selected for these. And at the end of that, they offered me a commission. So I went through that process and took some tests. They said, hey, you're going to be a pilot. I said, oh, great. So
that came to you. I mean, the decision to be a pilot is obviously like what you took they kind of evaluate and we think you should be a pilot.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your reaction to that?
Well, it was better than some of the other options. Okay. And it was a great experience. I have no regrets. So.
Okay.
It wasn't what I expected, but more than happy to do that job.
What did you expect?
Well, most of the Navy is driving ships, so I kind of expected to do that.
Right, yeah.
But this, like I said, other options came available, and it was another mini adventure, and I was happy to do it. The people were great. Really, I don't ever, not one day since I've been out have I missed the Navy, not one.
Yeah?
But I do miss the people. The people were great, and it was fun while I was there, but I wouldn't pay to do it myself.
Not to skip ahead to the end of the story, but I was interested to know about you've lived a military life, a military career with structure, with procedures, and then you're ejected out, and then none of those things, that structure isn't there anymore. Did you find that when you left, you were searching somehow for structure in your life, or were you just so like I'm laying on the beach in Hawaii happy, or how?
So I wouldn't say that. I knew that I was getting ready to transition. It was a major life transition. So when I came to Estonia, I decided just take some time off. I didn't want to jump into something else. I didn't want to go get a job. So I took a year off and did a little soul searching and figured out who I was without the uniform. And that was very healthy. And then at the end of that year, I was like ready to go again. So I was hungry, and then I started charging again, and ended up in cybersecurity. So
interesting. Okay, because as I've read about that, it can be a very difficult transition from having the structured environment and having the procedures and knowing where you exist in that organization. Then all of a sudden, anything you want, they're nothing.
I found, and I have quite many friends who have made the same transition, that the people who identified themselves with their job, like that was who they were. And like many pilots, I'm a naval aviator. That's who I am. And that's how they identify themselves. They have the hardest transition. And it's the people that kind of like, this is something I do, and I know that the ride's going to end one day. It's a bit easier for them. So it's just, maybe it's identity. But
okay. All right, I didn't want to skip ahead to the end of the story and injecting that, but that is interesting, transitioning between jobs and finding your new place and your new mission and the next thing that's up. And okay, you were quite happy to take that year, and indeed, like it wasn't, I don't know, I would hazard a guess that maybe if you've got good people around you, you've got a family, you've got a wife, this helps to keep you stable in that time. Absolutely. And you don't sort of run too far off the rails and can keep it calm.
Yeah, good support is always important. So, you have Skype these days, or even better things.
Really? There's a Skype? I've never heard about that in Estonia before.
Well, I have to tell you a Skype story real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Forgive me. But,
no, please.
Like when I started doing those cruises, I was gone for 6, 7, and 8 months at a time. And that was hard. We were getting mail, snail mail.
Oh.
So nothing did, improved the quality of life in the military than Skype. Like being able to talk to loved ones, even more than once a week, and connect. Like nothing was better. Like everyone, like they were. They were a great company. Estonia loves them for different reasons, but they don't understand the impact that they had in the world. Really exceptional.
What year was this?
Well, when I found it, I think I was late even. I was in 2006.
Oh, okay.
And my wife was even like, you don't know what Skype is?
That old thing? We've gone three more since then. We got the next 3 products since then. By 2006, did they have some? I mean, there was general use internet on ships that was being connected that you could use to make a video call.
Kind of happened after I was already gone from that. At that point, I had a period where I didn't deploy, and that's when all the good things happened.
Okay, so. All right, where to go with this is. So let's before we just go straight to leadership, talk about this topic and that topic more. I mean, about what you did in the military. So you're flying fixed wing first. That's how they get you going. You decide helicopters are maybe more your style and your suitability. And is that primarily what you flew through your aviator career?
No. So I have. Okay, so that's another thing is like, pilots love to collect flight hours. It's very important. They got to get their flight hours so they can go to the airlines. And this was never my kind of ambition. But so I have about half and half. Half my flight hours are in helicopters, the other half are in fixed wing. And I flew other fixed wing aircraft that were mostly like transport. So
okay, what sort of? I mean,
so it was called a C-12, which is like a King Air, and that's actually my favorite aircraft. And then a C-26 was called I think its official name is like a Swearinger sewer pipe, but I don't know what the civilian designation is for it, but it was bigger, but not my favorite aircraft.
Okay, so big transport planes.
No, not big transport planes.
No. Okay, not like a Hercules or something. Yeah, yeah.
But 26 people for the other one. So mostly the admiral and his staff and those type of things.
Okay. And were you? So by the time you were an officer and you were flying, so you weren't deployed on a carrier anymore. You weren't flying off carriers by then.
So. No, when I became an officer, helicopters have this a luxury of deploying off of smaller ships. So then I got introduced to a Navy I had never experienced, and that was the cruisers, destroyers, and the frigates. And actually, this is flying off the back of these. This is very challenging. That was great. So
all right, so we've got a helipad on the back of some sort of smaller ship, and you've got to land on this. I don't know what. How big is a helipad? How many meters square?
Depends on the ship.
Okay.
But it's enough room to get the rotors on. So I don't know. Depends on the helicopter too, I guess.
Right.
But I can't give you actual numbers. So.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. How was it? One thing about the military that I think the military's got a lot to teach us about leadership, and I'm very fascinated by it. But like in Australia, I don't have to do anything. We don't have mandatory military service like they do in Estonia, which and even that, I wonder how the fuck would I have dealt with that? I've very far away with that. I see all these young Estonian boys, and they go to the forest, even for they do their 8 months or 10 months or whatever, and then they have to. I see them. They have to live in the middle of the snow or something and camp in the icy lake or some shit like that. And I'm like, mate, no, we don't do that shit in Australia. I'm not.
Oh, you can't. You guys camp in the outback. I've seen it. Like you guys rough it too.
Yeah, maybe the heat, sure. But then maybe the
if
heat.
You're in Darwin, come on. Like it's hot. You're suffering.
And that's not just the locals. I know you're suffering. It's hot, and then I guess I see the Estonian boys in the snow and the ice and doing that, and I think, oh god, I could never do that. But that lifestyle where you, from straight up when you were 17 or 18, and you said, I'm going. And I'm going to just do this lifestyle of this structure, and I'm going to do this job, and we're going to travel the world, and that just appealed to you, that lifestyle, that living on a ship or living on a base doesn't...
Living on a ship doesn't appeal to anybody. We do it.
Okay.
At all. But Yeah, it's just like something you endure, and you say that you can't imagine it. Sure, you can't imagine it, but given a situation, you'll adapt, and so you just get put in situations and you adapt to them. And it's not like you're going there cold. Most of the time, they're putting you in a situation, they're training you on how to deal with the situation. You deal with it, and then you move on. And so, like, even when you, like, if you're doing Arctic type of operations versus hot weather operations, I mean, there's training for every one of them. So they train you, you do it, and then you learn and you move on. So even camping out in that miserable environment, I have to say, they teach you how to do it. You do it, and you move on. Like it's not like you look forward to it. You just know it needs to get done. And I think in Estonia especially, they need to know how to do it.
Yes, there might be a more pressing need in Estonia than, say, we're not too worried about someone making an invasion of Australia. I think from what I have understood, the Australian Army actually have I mean, if someone decided for some reason that they wanted to come from the north, they would just basically, the Australian Army would just drop back to about halfway through the country and go, come, if you want, come, please, try it. Try to get through that.
Clean it up.
Yeah, there's crocodiles, swamps, there's desert if you don't run out of water or food or something like that. If you get through the locals in Darwin, if you... And that's their thing. So, yeah, thankfully a few geographic benefits that Australia has in that regard.
Yeah. But, no, I think that you can adapt to anything. When it comes to, like, what they put in front of you, you can put a mental block up if you want. But at the end of the day, like, humans are pretty resilient.
Okay.
And, I mean, current situation included, people are adapting.
That is true. So it wasn't, because to me, I guess when I think about the military, I think like, oh, I can't just do what I want tonight.
No, that's true.
I've got to do
that. Sucks.
Yeah, I can't just go hang out. And maybe that's not something good for me, to just think, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want whenever I want. That's also not necessarily good, that I'm going to be on a base or a ship, or I've got to do something, and then I'm going to have duties at this hour and a few hours off in the evening, and then we get up again and we jump around in the morning for PT, and then it's off to the next duty. But there's still something for you that still held attraction for you, to know that this was your job, your life, it was all rolled in together. Yeah,
once again, going in, they never told me about standing duty. They didn't tell me I stand in watches. I mean, you didn't know about these things. They were like, surprise! But you, like I said, you deal with it. And those things weren't all bad. You learned some pretty valuable lessons there. And PT, it is terrible. I mean, you're waking up at 5:30 in the morning to go PT. That's like it doesn't. No one's out there, and no one loves it except the gunnery sergeant. The only reason he loves it is because he has a sadistic humor, and he's barking at you in a way that he's having fun. And if you ever, and actually, I've even seen people crying when these guys are yelling at him. But if you listen to what they're saying, it's usually hilarious. I mean, it's really funny. And so I came from a very, let's say, vocal family. And so when I got there, these guys weren't yelling worse than Dad. So I was listening to what they were saying rather than reacting to being yelled at. And it was there was plenty of times when I was laughing, and I shouldn't have been. So they know it sucks. They're having their fun. If you can be a part of it, you just endure it. The more you suffer together, the more the team grows together. I mean, you get to go through that. There's nothing like suffering together than suffering together. It just is. You don't have to like everybody. You just do it. And maybe that's a lot to ask, but for me, it came natural. I kind of knew the purpose, so it was easier to swallow, maybe.
And when you described, with the gunnery yelling at you and doing his whole kind of thing, when you kind of talk about it, though, you talk about it like you have a kind of built-in level of detachment there, that in that moment you could at least listen to his words. You weren't taking it personally. This guy's yelling at me. You could at least take that half a step away, which is maybe what was needed there. Yeah,
like I said, maybe it was... like I said, my father was a joker, number one, and number two, he wasn't he didn't let anything slide. So I thought I was being clever. Like he was already there. And I was playing knockdown dragouts. Like he was a boxer, I was a wrestler. So it was not malicious, but it was a physical relationship. And so when I got there, I was ready. And like anything that Gunny was throwing at me, I was kind of like, I know I'm not going to get hit. I know, it was good. So they pushed you. I mean, them yelling at you. Like, I think we maybe even talked about this before. When you're learning something, you like the way to learn it is to wrap an emotional response around it. So it doesn't have to be good though. Okay. And everyone in this day and age has this feeling that I want to have a good experience. This that that's nice if you can afford it. Yeah. But sometimes like you can't afford that, and so you get the cheaper version, which is a bad experience. So.
I mean, it certainly seems to be the way of the military, right? Okay, do this hard work, get up early, march so many miles, endure the slog, because that's what makes you okay. As you said, it puts that team together. You've all done the boot camp. You've all done that. You've all got that in common.
That's a very good point. Is boot camp? Like, so you have these moments where you have to go through this, but that's not it all the time. And actually, like Bill Burr was here a couple years ago, maybe.
Yeah, a couple of years, 1 or 2 years ago now.
And I went to see him, and like he nailed it. Like he was talking about the Navy versus the other thing, and like it's launching the aircraft and like how we're detached from the Army. And the Army's like they're in it, and like everything he said was pretty spot on. So I was in the crowd, definitely flushing, but at the same time enjoying it.
Those with the boot camp thing, right now, I can kind of get to imagine that, the idea. In general, the idea of a boot camp or something like that in the military is that you're all suffering, you're all getting better. Hopefully, you're all doing physical improvement, but you're all suffering through this education process together.
That's not the only reason, but yes.
Okay, yeah. And then at the other end, you've got that. I mean, yes, you've learned all these things, and so at the other end of all of that, you've got all these people that you're with your group or your battalion or whatever is and you've had that common experience. They've made this common shared experience that you've got, so you can build off that to work together.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder, tell me, how do you see this applying to the corporate world? Because I've seen a lot of summer days. I always get to host them, or I'm hosting some event. And so I've seen every level of team building, every level of we're having an overnight in the woods and we're going to camp and as the company, and I've seen we're in the nice hotel, and I've seen all the different, and I've seen companies try to replicate that. And most of the time, I guess a little cynical comedian, I'm like, this is all bullshit. Like, really, it's just we all get together and drink and have a bit of food, and that's a team building exercise. And but there must be some level that, and some companies do seem to do it. We don't need to go to boot camp to bond as a company, possibly.
I hope not. Yeah.
I hope not, mate.
I'm not joining that company.
Yeah. So how do you think that can relate to how can it work for a company to create a shared experience that's sufficiently difficult or involved enough to get that engagement with people?
Tough question. So let's say that boot camps aren't a bad idea. You bring everyone together for some short period of time. I think maybe 2 months is too much to ask for any kind.
Sure, it might be a bit, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, it allows people to get on the same page. That being said, you should all have certain common experiences. And then, and also, you're basically trying to establish the foundation for your culture or your values. We talked about this in that speech. Like, values are probably, of culture, values are probably the easiest thing to address. And actually, like even in the military, like every branch has its own core values, and they're all different. So, and how you like explain those values and the expectations around those values, I think that's important. Like, that you're laying the foundation, if you will, that everything's going to be built upon. So, in that sense, I think that it has to be well planned if you want to do a boot camp. There should be like common experiences that everyone takes out of it, not just this group, but it should be related to the last groups. And if you're just doing a different set of activities, then you're doing a team building event.
Right.
But if you want to lay a foundation or the culture of the organization and the values and stuff like that, then it has to be like something identifiable that carries value from year to year. So things that people are going to identify with. So I think it's a tough challenge how you do that.
It definitely sounds like something that the leadership of the organization have to be very actively involved in. They can't just call in the event planner, get some events set up, do a bunch of stuff over a day or two.
Yeah, it would be always with leadership. It would be nice if they have a vision. Okay. So if they have a vision, then call the event planner and say, this is what I want to accomplish. And I do think that a leader is better off getting the event planner and having them do it. They're the specialists, right?
Sure. Well, no, yeah, not that they should do it. Pardon me. Not that they should implement it themselves, but the leader then can't. I mean, you've got to be imparting that vision somehow. Now, whether that's a talk, whether that's being active with them during that boot camp, whether that's just doing it right along with them, and whatever the suffering or the suck is the whole time that the leader is there
that,
with them.
But
yeah, sure.
But for example, in Pipedrive, we usually have we have a boot camp, and usually it's 2 or 3 days. We did before COVID, so things are changing. But we definitely have a standard set of videos that you watch concerning our founders, and they try to arrange an evening where you get to meet at least one or two of them. And so you meet them, you can talk to them, ask some questions, and have that experience. So in that sense, I think those are kind of the core things that everyone in Pipedrive gets to experience. And then there are other activities, and usually around team building or a way to think critically or creatively. And if you're doing something about creativity, it probably shouldn't be the same every time. But anyway. Yeah,
I think also it might be about in a company how you present it and how you pitch it to the employees, because employees might be expecting, this is our summer days when we do a few activities, we run around the forest a little bit, and then in the evening it's drinking and barbecue and band. Or is this something I would never take a summer day seriously? I'm not going there to think. I'm going there, but to sort of, I don't know, have that. Maybe you need that, and you need some other event because no doubt people need relaxation time as well. They need time off too. Can't all be.
And I definitely think that that time to kind of bond, however, in what form it comes, sports or drinking, party, whatever. That's important.
True.
And so I wouldn't undervalue that by any means. And when it comes to going to summer days for just military type training, oh my God, no. I wouldn't recommend that. But if there's maybe common themes about where you want to go in the future, and you want everyone to hear that or experience it at the same time, it'd be a missed opportunity if you didn't do it. So,
true. Summer days are an interesting idea for me in general, because I don't remember any company I ever worked for in Australia doing that.
No, I think in Australia and America, we had already moved on to lean companies. So these types of things were kind of, you're invading my privacy, and they were moved out, and it was done differently, if at all. So it was maybe more transactional. Whereas I think in Estonia, it's a nice tradition, but definitely a tradition probably left over from Soviet times, and they're adapting it. Yeah,
that you're right. It was a good description, transactional. I go to my job and that's it, and there's some team building or something. The most I got, if Rob Castaneda, if you're listening, the most I think I got out of him was a schnitzel and a beer at Christmas. We go down to the German place in the Rocks in Sydney, and here's your schnitzel and off you go. And the think that I would give one night or 2 nights of my time, that I would give up my free weekend or several days and actually go with all those people I go to work to, but I come home to get away from them. and now I've got to go spend 2 nights with them. It was a fresh idea, at least. Well, not for me, because I've never had a proper job in Estonia. Yeah. So I'm not actually complaining against them because they gave me a lot of work over the years. So when I say I know about summer days, just because I've been the host, not that I've actually been on the other end of them.
Yeah, they're good. Like they can serve a purpose, but at the same time, I have gone to them and been like, I'm not really interested in another party. I've been drinking for 22 years. I'm done with that. So.
So back to your military career, I guess, to get into it as well. Where did you see? I mean, were you ever deployed into an active role, into a war zone, or to a campaign?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which ones were you in? Where were you in?
Really want to talk about that?
No? Okay, I don't know. Sorry, pardon me. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the last Gulf War, we were there. And
I'm trying to use it as a stepping off point, but okay. So there was Gulf War II.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were there for that one.
Right.
And what we did, I don't think is relevant or important. Mm-hmm. Big operation. Quite frankly, I was on a ship. We were doing stuff in the Gulf. It was fun. I'll talk about it over a beer, but not in a format like this.
That's okay. No, it's all good. Look, this is new to me as well. I'm here talking to comedians and people in the entertainment industry, right? So,
plenty of the stories will make you laugh, but I don't want to be broadcasted.
No, I understand that as well. You've still got to be some thought about, exactly the details that you're giving out in each of those. Okay, let's take another left turn then here. I think that when dealing with situations, detachment, to make a good decision in a moment, and when something's coming along and we need to make the correct leadership decision or the correct choice in a moment, I find more and more that I probably know what to do. I probably know if I sit down, I can think of, in this situation, how am I going to deal with these people? How am I going to deal with this situation? Unless it's a technical problem that I've got to sit down and work out. If it's something to do with people, I probably inside of me kind of know the answer if I take a moment. But it's that detachment in a moment, which is really difficult. We get emotional. We are frustrated for some reason, frustrated at an event, frustrated at a person. And I even think I had one last night. I'm standing at the door taking tickets, and some people come in and they're like, "Can we just come and have a drink?" I'm like, "No, it's a place. We've got a ticket to get in. We just want to have a drink." I'm like, "Come on, man." And I know I'd been running around. I hadn't sat down for a while, and I could feel that frustration sort of growing. And I know that detachment is the key there, to take a step out for a second, fresh the mind, and then try to see the situation from some sort of third person, or just detach for a second. And that's why I was sort of already hinting that when we were talking about being in boot camp, that you sort of had this default detachment from that situation. Stress, yeah. And I know I can see that the detachment is the core of the way to start dealing with almost any situation, is stop, detach, and now we try to think logically through something.
Yep.
And I guess, where am I going with this? What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on how did you do it when you're in, I don't know what the details are, but you were in live fire missions. There's stuff happening. There's real danger around you, and you have to make those decisions and staying detached in that moment.
Yeah. So I think that the answer is planning and training.
Okay.
And so, when you get in a stressful situation, it's usually because even if it's a good one, it's because you're not familiar with what's going on. It may be small, subtle things, but you understand that there's something going on, so your stress rises. There's good stress and bad stress, whatever. So, and also you talked about the detachment. So your ability to detach, it doesn't mean that you don't have these same emotional experiences underneath. You just put yourself in a different place. And usually that has to do with, I've been here before. So if you practice something, and I mentioned tabletops, disaster recovery, or things that we do at Pipedrive, those are good situations to be put in an odd situation. And you're not familiar with it, you got to think, and it is stressful and annoying. But dealing with it forces something in you. And as you deal with it, and then you center yourself, to deal with a ridiculous situation. One of my favorite tabletops is a zombie attacks.
Okay.
And the simple reason is like zombies don't exist, but it's happening. Now you need to deal with it. What do we need to think about? And when people start actually thinking through it and how we're going to do it and how our business is going to go through or deal with the situation, if you get them to just not throw up and they can't deal with the situation because it doesn't exist. So they where you get people that play because they're familiar with the zombie genre or whatever. But as people start playing, more people get pulled into it, and they understand the rules because it's being laid out as you go. It's interesting. You get to see people in a different dynamic. But once they go through this stressful situation, then you can add another one, a realistic one. And they understand how to deal with the people. But the most important thing for the individual is them understanding their emotions and the stress that they're feeling and identifying it. So once they get that under control, then they can deal with the situation.
So even I guess to back up for people, so a tabletop is where you're sitting down, you're talking with someone, trying to walk through a scenario, role play out a scenario. Is that what you mean
basically.
by that? Okay. And even in that scenario, that you're able to elicit that level of stress from them. What would you do? What would you do? Are you...
Yeah, I don't sit there and do that. Usually, usually you have like if you plan it well, you have a like time. And so, for example, like at this time something happens, at this time something happens, and you have they're called injects. So as your injects come in, people deal with the new information, and it's how they deal with that information, and it'll change their direction. Okay. And so a lot of times, just those changes of directions or knowing how they're supposed to respond. Some people do it very naturally. They're good communicators. They deal with stress naturally. Mm-hmm. Like, you might even be surprised who that is. Other people can't deal with the fact that they don't have all the information. They don't want to make a decision because they don't have all the information, and they freeze. And so you got to get them in the situation where they're used, or get them in to have the experience where they have to make these decisions. Mm-hmm. They have to, like, it can be the wrong decision. Go ahead and make it. Yeah. And we'll talk about it later. Mm. And right and wrong, like when you're in a let's call it, when you're experiencing a disaster, there's probably no right or wrong. Like, you're dealing with it. Mm. It's just like your actions are either going to resolve it quicker or later. So you're just trying to minimize the damage that's done to your world or whatever. So for business, this has to do with dollar signs or time or people losing work time. Military, a lot of times life or death stuff. So you had a different risk assessment. But basically that's it. You just want people to deal with a situation. The more experience they have with dealing with stressful situations outside of work, not the ones they know every day. Mm-hmm. You got to bring something that's an external experience, push it in, and now what do you do? And that works. And the more you do it, again, at the beginning, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. You're LARPing. Like live action role playing. Like, no one wants to do this. Like the worst thing, I mean, the one next step is you could make them put on a costume and do it, but that would be too much. But again, like you get to have this experience, good or bad. They're learning from it. They're learning how their other team members work. They're learning how to communicate. They're learning what they don't know, how your process, procedures, all that stuff doesn't work. And what to do differently next time. So you can't say it's a failure. You can just make recommendations like, this could be done better, or this could be done better, or we expect this, or we didn't meet our goals, whatever. Like, you can start defining these things. But if you never said what your goals are, you've never held the bar anywhere, you haven't talked to people about this, or they don't know who to call, then you're really extending that time frame when disaster happens. So,
yeah, the zombie one is very interesting because it's not real at all, and we have no frame of reference for what we would actually do in that movies, situation. Right? Yeah, that's it, right? Okay, and what you said, we're either are you either, but the important point for what I took away from that was either you're dealing with it now, or you're gonna deal with it later. Yeah. So maybe you might want to deal with it now, potentially. Sometimes I can imagine, don't make a decision until you absolutely have to make that decision can also be an option there as well. Can we just take a small step in the right direction? Are we not sure? Are we unclear about how to go there? Okay, cool. I don't have all the information at this moment. What is the smallest step I can make in a logical direction without but also without delaying that decision either. I'm not trying to avoid that. I'm trying to gather more information to make it correct.
But that's leadership, isn't it? That's where you're making decisions with the best information you have to continue on, whatever your mission is.
It is. So you're putting people in those situations. And that's over a table. I mean, that's a tabletop. That's we're sitting in an office and doing it. I was listening to a story today, and it was a story actually from. It was about it was a helicopter pilot, and I think it was in Vietnam. And there was whatever they were getting shot at. They were flying out of a hot LZ. They picked up the troops. They're flying out of a hot LZ, and they got out of there, but the bird was going down, and the way it was what do they call it? Free rotation when the motors stopped.
Yes.
Auto rotation.
Yes.
Where the motors stopped, the helicopter's still going, but they're still in the air. The things are still flying. And the pilot's trying to bring this helicopter down, and it was said that they had this helicopter full of troops, and they said that particular maneuver had never been pulled before in that particular helicopter. That there was an auto rotation, so nothing was driving the rotors, and they had to find some place to land and land as well as they could. Which, spoiler alert, wasn't that great, but they got to the ground somehow. And I started to think, and they were like, well, the very experienced pilot. And I got to think, like, how the hell do you train for that? Now, again, I don't want to particularly go for helicopters, but to me, that sounded like such an intense situation. I've got an overloaded helicopter. I've got an auto rotation, a major malfunction that I don't even know how the hell you would start to simulate that. So an extremely difficult emergency to simulate without possibly wrecking many millions of Uncle Sam's hardware. And and apparently this pilot was trained, and he kind of, we got him to the ground. They were pretty banged up, but he got him to the ground. And I was like, how do you go about training for super unlikely, difficult, when it's just so difficult to put someone in that real situation? How do you even begin training someone like that?
Well, it doesn't have to be a helicopter scenario. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Not to get that. Just that was the example I heard today. Yeah.
In that case, auto rotation is actually, depending on the aircraft, like you do train for it all the time, and you do it, and the backup is you don't commit, in the sense that you don't remove power, you don't remove the transmission, like you do it under a controlled experience with an experienced pilot. And you understand what you're supposed to do in that stressful situation. So you have check marks, you have an emergency procedure, you do the emergency procedure from memory, and then you watch the gauges and do what you were trained. And if you do that, like, even if you don't do it perfectly, 90% is pretty good, Okay. So the same thing. It doesn't matter. Like, you just need to understand what your outcomes you want to achieve, what is achievable, and how you can test it in a way that doesn't burn down your business. So, and I would actually argue that especially like IT companies, like you can get pretty good at this. And I mean, the infrastructure is all there. Sure, you have to pay for it, but you can build it quite quickly, test it quite quickly, and throw it away quite quickly, and understand what you can do next time to get better. And there are. Yeah, when you're talking about a non-IT company, then of course you have limited resources. You got to figure out how to do that. But most companies that are in hardware have safety training of some sort, so they do speak to it. You might not get the actual simulation or scenario, but if you don't have a simulator, probably a tabletop where you talk through it and you have shared experiences with experienced people. Is the best way to go. And so if you're not doing that, there's a good chance that your organization's brittle, because you have a few people who are experienced or have all the knowledge that are capable and dependent on those people. So if those people end up going away for whatever reason, the bus, then your organization's brittle in a sense, and you're rolling the dice. It's high risk.
Okay. All right. So there is some ways. Well, that was interesting. But to give the helicopter analogy, there are some ways even because I was like, "Whoa, you're gonna screw with 40 million worth of hardware and start free falling with that."
So what they do is they put you in a much cheaper one first, and you practice there.
All right,
for
that's a good metaphor.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get the metaphor back to the real life here. That okay, there is cheaper helicopters that we could practice. There are cheaper. You don't have to test on necessarily your full production or something in a business. Right.
Like those type of, like, for example, like before you go in deployment, we have to do certifications. Like you got to get up to speed. So you're flying, you're doing your NATOPS check, you're doing your instrument check, you're doing your tactics, your weapon tactics check. So all these things. And so you have to know how to do these things, and you have to be tested with a pilot. And so not everyone goes to like launching missiles or shooting guns, but you have to go up into that fire button, and you have to know it cold. And so if you're not ready to deploy, they don't send you. And so like we are being tested constantly, and I would say that's like probably a great takeaway from the military is they do training well. Civilians, I think they see it as a cost, and so maybe they don't put as much time or effort into it. But again, like my big thing is I think about culture, and so I with Pipedrive, for example, we have a training culture. Now it's not as robust as I would like it to be, but it's more robust than most I've seen. So I think training is a very healthy way to kind of influence culture. Also make sure the experiences get passed on from generation to generation. You can get your inexperienced people up to speed so they know what the seniors are doing and why they're doing it. They can work with them every day and not have the conversation. But if you put them in a training situation and something can go sideways and they experience it together, now we can actually talk. So there's a lot of value there.
What does a training culture mean beyond? Because most companies that I would hazard that most companies, when they talk about training, it's like, where's a training course? Go on a training course. Or we get a trainer in, or get someone speaks for a little while, and you get some check marks, and you've done a couple of training courses. You maybe read a manual. What does it mean to introduce a training culture?
Oh, that's heavy. So, that's we're opening a can of worms here. But I think that it depends on the company, number one. Okay. But what I've seen at Pipedrive is we actually have everyone's involved in kind of lifelong learning. Everyone's like reading a lot. Everyone is doing extra courses. They're trying to learn some new piece of knowledge that's going to help them with their job. So that's already there. But we don't have the tools or the mechanisms to kind of understand know what people know, simply. And usually that's done by testing, which is painful and often considered a waste of time. So figuring out this problem is something I'm working on, but I don't have it nailed yet. So
that's okay, because there's the problem of identifying what is training culture, what are the elements that go into that, what are the practices, what are the direct things. And then I would imagine it's also, well, how do you then change an existing organization to do that? There's kind of two steps in that. Yeah. That, I mean, you're fairly high up there, which definitely helps. You're going to need that leadership level. You're going to need leaders to be interested in that. You're going to need to know that people are going to want to know that their CEO is also reading books, also finding the next skill that they need to know. Because they're like, oh, I need to do that as well.
But, it's tough. And, I mean, training, like making good training, that's tough.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've made all kinds of bad training, so I know. But like getting good training is tough. And then, because it's content. And at the end of the day, you don't want to have the same content twice. Like very often, you don't even want to have content about the same subject more than 2 or 3 times. So there's a challenge there, going back to knowing what people know. And like if you don't know, like you're probably giving them the wrong training, and you don't know how to engage them. And if even if it's great training, like who's it great training for? Probably not the entire organization, right? So that's a challenge.
So individualistic.
Yeah,
that's so down to the person. What are they? I mean, we're talking about great content, and I mean, in comedy, that's very obvious to us. People don't want to hear the same joke twice. That's clearly, we got to keep turning over. You can hear a song many times, right? Songs get but because it's a surprise. Because with the joke, the punchline is surprise to you. That what a good. The essence of a joke is that I have a scenario that I paint a picture in your mind. I have a setup that creates a mental image in your mind, and there is a punchline that drastically changes that mental image.
So is your metric for how good the joke was the response time for people?
Could be, because then maybe it hits them a bit later.
Yeah.
Maybe it takes a while to sink in, and that's a longer, deeper laugh. Because if you're just going off how quick they get it, because the other style of humor is recognition humor, which is 95% of the humor that's on the internet today. Every meme that you've ever seen is recognition humor, which is, it's funny because it's true. I know that scenario, so that's why I find that. And that's nowhere near as satisfying for the human brain than the first kind that I told you of surprise. Surprise is when the brain gets tricked. That's when we love it more. So it's hard to, if people can see it coming, or it could be strong, they think they see it coming and then something else comes. So it's always good surprise, good mental imagery is the core of that. And even when people say, oh, well, I'm a storyteller, yes, okay, sure, you may be able to paint an excellent picture in their head, but a great story really is just a collection of smaller jokes in the middle of it. And you've created a very elaborate canvas which we to change bits and pieces from expectations or take them in a new direction that they didn't expect. And that's where the humor comes from. So, yeah.
Is there like an equation for figuring out humor? Is it been figured out yet?
It's definitely not on the internet. That's for sure. That's for sure. We look every time, we like every meme. And I do it as well. I sit there browsing every meme. Why am I doing this? I know that my brain will not receive the satisfaction of, if you sit down and watch a stand-up special, yes, you will get some good quality stuff in there, but instead it's easy to, anyway. Yeah. I hate the internet. What was that? This was good. I like this thing about training and the individuality and how hard it is. I used to be, we talked about that I was in IT before, and I was a software trainer. And I think my first boss, Rob, quickly worked out that I was better at talking than I was at programming and sitting down all day and doing that. And I could do it, but I was a bit of a brat. I was a bit of an arrogant piece of shit back then. I don't think I had humility when I was 22 graduating from university. I thought that I was like, where's my money? I'm a software engineer now. I should be getting $100,000 about next week. And I wasn't I didn't have that. I didn't have a humble philosophy. I didn't have a growth mindset. I wasn't learning. I was like, I'm learning. Where's my money now? And he sent me out training courses. So he was like, well, okay, you arrogant little shit. And I had to go teach when I really hadn't even learnt it yet. And he's you're gonna dance, boy. And I had to dance, and I had to teach Java at first. I was teaching Java, Sun certified Java training when I'd learnt Java at university. I'd been a tutor for some subjects, so I could kind of do that. And then there was this other enterprise integration software that I just had to learn and then go teach. And I remember, I was shit scared. Yeah. I mean, I was scared. I had to sit there and do the exercises. Some days you're one day ahead of the students as well, you're sitting in a hotel room and you're in Bratislava or something because that's where the boss sent you. You got to give a training course to some company. And I'm in my hotel room in the evening drinking a 4-pack of beer trying to do the next exercise because I'm going to need to teach it the next day. Which was, years later when I actually realized I knew how to do this stuff, life was so much better for me.
Just the stress.
Yeah, but I was young. I was 23, 24, arrogant, and all right, okay,
everybody goes through it.
Go through that. So yeah, I understood how stiff those training courses were, and how, and even with culture played a factor. I got sent to Saudi Arabia to give a couple training courses. They were like, I remember in Sydney, they were like, who wants to, we got a course that's in the Middle East. And I remember it was basically that situation where there's a lineup of guys and everyone takes a step back. And then it's me going, yeah, I'll go. Sounds fucking all right. And what actually happened with that was that, I mean, again, I know nothing about the world and we've got to go Saudi Arabia. Jeez, mate, that sounds fucking interesting. Exciting. I'll go there. And so there's formalities. One can't just walk into Saudi Arabia. One needs to get visas and so forth. And I got this letter from the Saudi embassy and it said all this Arabic writing and it had my name and my details and all this Arabic writing. Went, beauty, got my visa. I'm good to go. Get on the plane, spend a couple of days in Dubai in a nice hotel, see what's going on. I go to get on my flight to Riyadh and they're like, sorry, sir, we can't let you on this flight. I'm like, what could possibly be the problem? And I'm like, here's my letter. He's like, sir, this letter says go to the embassy and get your visa. So there are calls made. I'm calling Sydney. I'm calling Riyadh. I have angry people on either side. They're going, what the fuck are we going to do with you? So I'm holed up in Dubai for a few more days. I check myself into a cheap hotel as like the least I could do for my boss to not, have him this whatever hundreds of euros a day in some nice fancy hotel. So I check myself into some small place. I camp out there for a couple of days. I get told, okay, here's the plan. You're going to go to Bahrain. You get a day in Bahrain, you'll get a hotel room. You will meet a man in the lobby of the hotel. Give him your passport at 7 a.m. He will come back at 8 p.m. in the evening with a visa. Now, this does not sound like a good plan, but I am in no situation to argue with any. I'm like, give it to the guy in the hotel? What?
I lived in Bahrain for a while.
Okay, but they got to do it, right? So I did it. I met the guy at 7 a.m. in the morning, the gentleman. I was there one day after the Grand Prix. Not like I complain for these things. One day late. 2005, maybe?
Yep, I was there.
Huh. Okay, I could have just called you up. I should have, yeah. Yep. I mean, like, Jesse, you don't know who I am. I'm this idiot. I'm stuck. So yeah, they got me into Saudi Arabia. I got the visa, and then I was able. We were a bit delayed, but what I learned anyway. Where was I going with this story? Yes, training culture is that I was giving courses it was for Saudi Aramco, giving training courses to them, and I understood there was the worker guys, and then there were the leaders, the bosses in the room, and it was very important for the workers in the room to be seen to be doing it well for their bosses. Mm. And maybe if I'm teaching some Europeans, I can be more like, no, you didn't do that right. Here, this isn't right. I'm going to sit down and work with you, but I could be more direct, like, no, this isn't correct. I understood really quickly, like, I couldn't say that. These guys didn't know what they were doing. They didn't really know what was up, but I couldn't. They were the dumbest students I had if you wanted to put them on a scale. But there's no way I could tell them with their boss there, because that's going to be very bad. And my only criteria that I'm being judged on is the Friday survey that they take when they evaluate the trainer. And so I can't annoy these guys. So I've got to work with the bosses in the room, and they know even less. But okay, I'm certainly not going to tell them they're wrong. And then I can't make the employees in the room see bad to the bosses, and yeah, I had to dance in this cultural environment. How was it for you working in Bahrain and in the Middle East that way? How culturally?
I mean, of course, there's culture shock, but I have to say that I really enjoyed Bahrain. I didn't know what to expect. I got there, and I lived there for I think about 2 years, and I enjoyed it.
You were living on base there?
No, I lived on the economy. So,
what does that mean, economy?
Economy. So, like, if there's a base, like if you live off a base, like you're you're helping the local economy. So we call that the economy.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay, so you get to live off base.
I had an apartment, out in town.
Oh, nice. Okay, huh? And so interesting. And but you're working on base, so you're still mainly working with Americans or American military, or you're working with local people?
Both, but like mostly I was flying at that point, so it was just going to Kuwait a lot, Dubai, Middle East.
Sure. That stuff there. The last story for me was that when I was in Riyadh, the final day. Oh yeah, so I was not good at being away from home, which is why all these questions that I had for you earlier about like, how did you deal with that? How could you possibly not do what you want to do? Because I can't understand, which is fine. But so 2 weeks away from home, and I'm like, I'm so lonely, whatever. And I'd been using dial-up internet to call home. I've been buying a prepaid card using dial-up internet. Because in Australia, when you dial up, the phone call is like fixed fee, 30 cents or something, right? But that was a timed call. So I'd been using hours and hours of internet where the actual phone call part was a timed cost. So I go to check out from the hotel and they're like, yes, sir, thank you very much. And your phone bill of $2,000. And I'm like, what fuck now? And because I'd never bothered to ask the question about timed local calls. I went, that's very interesting. Huh. Now, what had also happened was I had the manager at Saudi Aramco had called me up, and he just wanted to meet me on the last day. I hadn't met him. He wasn't in the course, but he just wanted to meet and talk to me. And I got into his office and hello, just nice to meet this gentleman. And I understood very quickly that he was like, wait, there's this crazy Australian fuck who's willing to come here and teach for us. Maybe we can poach him and pay him money. And by this stage, I have no intention of working here in Saudi Arabia. I'm very convinced that I don't want to be here, but I'm like, I got a $2,000 phone bill that I need to pay. So I was like, well, your organization is very interesting and respectful. And I was telling him, but I got a problem. And he's like, what's the problem? And I'm like, I got this phone bill. Do you think this could be sorted?
Well played. Well played.
So we got it worked out. I think the Saudis ended up paying for it rather than my boss. Thankful, Jesus. So yeah, I was a dumb little shit, and thankfully I got out of my few.
Yeah, just in a new situation. You don't know the playing field happens.
Yeah, cultural issues.
Yeah,
cultural issues. Oh God, we can talk for an hour and a half. I'm sorry, I could talk and talk. So the time gets away from me, so I could talk.
Well, it was a pleasure.
It was very nice to talk to you, Jesse. Thank you for coming in, sir. I appreciate your lessons and just applying the lessons that you've learned from just looking after people and leadership and applying that to business. I think was the important takeaway here, that you brought it back to what you're actually doing with real companies here in Estonia right now.
Thank you. Once again, I stayed in the military so long because my thing or my interest is leadership from a very young age. And they provide all the opportunities, every day, even from the time I went in at 17 to years later, there was always the opportunities for leadership. And so I capitalized on them, took them with me. And I think now at the point I find leadership's important when you can find someone who's willing to listen or engage it. But mentorship also. And that's probably the next thing you should think about.
Mentorship and leadership.
Well, you talked about before you're the leader for your crew. At the same time, they have the young careers. You mentioned it. You're mentoring them too. So it's maybe not even leadership. If you mentor, you'll get them where you need them to be.
It's there, yeah, and it's something that I think about. I can definitely see when I say I make broad, grand statements like leadership has helped me be better and outcome. Oh, look at me, I'm so wise. What does it basically mean? I stopped looking at my own shit and started helping my employees. That's like the unfancy term for it. I started to take an interest in not interest, but be like, how can I help you? How can I help you today? How can I help you today? Oh, you got a problem? Cool. I'm going to fix it for you. Here's,
Careful with that.
Okay, not fix it, but you got a big overriding issue, a roadblock. I'm going to help you get through it. I'm going to help you do that so you can get on with your job and do that. And when I stopped being so self-centered, I guess, and just sort of sitting inward and going, I'm going to do my task, but instead I'm going to help you today. How can I, what difficulties do you face? How can I coach you through them? All of a sudden, yeah, there's the magic in that. Lo and behold, things get better when you start having that attitude. So
absolutely.
Indeed. Jesse, thank you very much for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Nice.